What's the worst thing that could reasonably happen? Particularly for those that fall into black pill, red pill culture, some men spend a lot of time online saying that TikTok or some other external thing has ruined women. They have expectations that are just too high. To have a chance with an average girl, you need to make 7 figures a year, be 8 foot tall and built like Sam Sulek. Having self-dismissive thoughts like, I have no chance with her so I won't even bother trying, or I don't want to bother her. But going back to the original question I asked, it isn't reasonable to assume that merely talking to a woman and showing a little interest is enough to have you labelled creepy. 50 years ago, it was unusual not to speak to people that you had interactions with, especially those that you see frequently, whether it was at the shops, the gym, the pub, golf course, or anywhere else that you might see strangers. Today, the unusual thing is talking to people, and it seems absurd how large of a societal shift can take place in just a few generations, with continuously repeated half-truths, such as stranger danger and safety and solitude. Which is ironic, because for a lot of people, their friends are more dangerous to them than most strangers. Fake friends are worse for you than enemies. I hate the phrase fake friend, but there isn't really a better term for it. I've talked before about how you should be careful who you keep in your company. Maybe I'll make a full video on this at some point, but today we're talking about dating and how you don't have to be scared to shoot your shot. Friends can be both a huge help and a massive hindrance when it comes to dating. Some have been in committed relationships for years, some only have a string of one-night stands, and others are struggling just as much or maybe even more than you are. It's probably true that there aren't many good women left, but it's also true that good men are few in number, so you may as well become one of them. According to YouTube statistics, I have a 93% male audience. Ignoring this, I try to provide perspective and advice for women too. Half of you are also between the ages of 25 to 34. 50 years ago, the majority of you in this age group would have been married, owned a home, and had 1 to 3 children. You can blame the world for your situation if that's what you want to do, but it won't change anything and it won't make you feel better. Sometimes, you're just dealt a bad hand, and you can't find the motivation to play it well in spite of the world. If you want to quit the game, flip the table and sulk, as if you're a child, then that's up to you, but I don't recommend it. Unless you're an exceptionally high-value male, women aren't going to just throw themselves at you whilst you sit in your room playing video games all day. Who do you expect to meet? Do you seriously think that your Uber Eats driver is going to be a 5'2" supermodel who gets so excited by the mere sight of you that she marries you on the spot? What a sight you are. You might not have even had a shower this week, a haircut this month, or a job this year. Women aren't going to line up for that opportunity. This is an extreme example, of course. Most of you watching will have jobs, good hygiene, but can you do better? Can you leave your job and find a career? Can you find a haircut that suits you better? Maybe buy that aftershave that you've been considering. Women literally just have to exist to have their DMs flooded by men. You have to do something to make yourself stand out if you want to compete. Just be interesting. What an easy thing for me to say, right? But you can at least say something interesting, which is far simpler, such as, did you know that there is an area of space that appears completely empty, which is more than 1 billion light years across? Ideally, you should know at least a small amount about whatever interesting thing you decide to talk about so that you can answer any questions and have an extended conversation. Some women will like a more direct approach, such as, hey, I think you're attractive, could I take you out sometime? But a lot of women will be turned off by such a direct approach from a stranger. So don't be a stranger. Introduce yourself and ask her name when you get the chance. Pay attention to what she says, be respectful, and if she seems bored, just move on. One of the best conversations I've had with a 10 out of 10 was with a woman that I worked with. We were laughing the entire time, but I lacked the confidence to ask her out or for her phone number, and given the nature of my job at the time, more than a year later, I still haven't seen her again. I think about that a lot. Gaining confidence is no easy task. I've made a video on this topic already, but simply, to be confident, you need to become the man that you're pretending to be. Because, more often than not, the man getting in your way is you. The point is, even if she had said no, maybe it would have been awkward if I saw her again, but so what? If you exist in your comfort zone, you're probably either going to die alone or with a partner that you quietly think is not as good as you could have had, and end up living in a fantasy world of what could have been. All the women you could have been sleeping with instead. That's bad news for everyone. If you haven't already heard or seen videos by Homath, his dating videos are excellent. His understanding of psychology and sociology is deep. He talks about the dating pool, how you can't change the experiences someone has already had, but that you don't have to add to them, giving even more bad experiences that will only compound, to go back into the dating pool and become an even larger problem for the next guy. I used to work with a guy who was 23 and a virgin. which is fairly uncommon at that age. He was obsessed with the idea of losing his virginity. Any woman, anytime, anywhere. The problem for him is that most women thought that he was creepy. They could sense his intentions and didn't want a part of it. Eventually though, he did find someone to help with his issue. She thought they were in love, and he gave her some baggage to take back into the dating pool. I'm not going to try to convince you that sex outside of a relationship is wrong. If that's what you want to do, then I'm sure that my opinion won't stop you anyway. You can definitely find women that will sleep with you without the expectation of further commitment, but one of you will probably end up feeling hurt. And it won't always be her. No matter which town or city you're in, there is a small pool of women slowly sleeping around with an even smaller pool of high-value men. If you fall into one of those pools, you might feel quite satisfied with the way that sexual relationships work today. Or maybe you don't. A group of women being willing to have sex without commitment lowers the bar of sexual standards for the rest of women who want to enter committed relationships before engaging in sex. It's no secret that men are easily corrupted and controlled by their feelings of lust. If one option is essentially unlimited promiscuous sex with a different gorgeous woman every day, and the other a traditional lifestyle, a wife, a home, and children, not many men will choose the latter. So that's why women might not be happy with the arrangement. But what problem would men, or at least high-value men, have with this, particularly if they're choosing to act that way? Well, for a start, it's probably 1 to 10% of men having the majority of sex, so 90 to 99% of men will have a big problem with that, which is where scary terms like the coming incel revolution come from. Another channel called What If Alt Hist has a great video on this topic. But even for high-value men, very few want to live the Dan Bilzerian lifestyle, surrounded by scantily clad women who will be bored of you before the sun sets. Most men treat the arrangement like a treadmill. They think they can jump on, have some fun, and then jump off when they find wifey. That way of thinking is shared by a large portion of promiscuous women too, and is completely delusional. You can't run from your past. It will follow you everywhere that you go and into every new relationship. Separating sex from emotion is like trying to separate a covalent bond. Maybe you can do it if you try hard enough, but is it really worth the extra effort? In fact, a lot of both men and women are choosing to completely opt out of the dating and sex market. Depending on the source, up to 40% of Gen Z are self-reporting zero sexual partners in the past year, and some surveys show that for quite possibly the first time in history, fewer women than men are engaging in sex or dating. The ramifications of that can't be underestimated for one population collapse, which if you haven't noticed is already well underway, especially in the West where birth rates are already fast approaching below replacement. The elite spent decades talking about how the earth is overpopulated and you didn't even notice as they turned men into incels and women into cat mums within no more than 3 generations. If women aren't dating and aren't even having sex, that's even more reason for you to just talk to her. She's probably lonely too. Did a specific woman appear in your mind when I just said that? Just talk to people that you want to talk to, find your confidence and shoot your shot. Sure, women are famously terrible at dropping hints, but men are even more infamous for being terrible at recognising them. Not every conversation with someone has to lead to a date. It isn't a crime for you to just talk to people. You can exercise your hint radar and try to realise in the moment rather than 3 days later where the line of friendly or flirty lies. Depending on your source, between 50 to 83% of people nowadays want to get married. Since people like to talk about the wage gap, married men earn significantly more money than their single counterparts. Despite some calling marriage an outdated piece of paper, most still aim to achieve it. Sure, you can argue that 50% of marriages end in divorce, but for couples that pray together daily, it drops to less than 1%. But something that increases the rate of divorce is second and third marriages. These can be as high as 73%. Because why would you bother learning your lesson or seeing character growth when you can just remarry and take your old problems into a new relationship? To have the best chance at a successful relationship and eventual marriage, you just need to communicate well with your partner, get onto and stay on the same page, which is easier said than done. You should also talk about and understand each other's value systems and moral structure as early into the relationship as possible, which is definitely not easy because you can't treat a first date like a job interview. Good first date ideas are anything from a walk, a coffee, or a trip to the zoo. Anything that you can do to get to know your date and enjoy each other's company. Ideally, the man should pay, but a huge grey area exists, filled with entitled women who expect you to offer them the world whilst they do nothing but exist. Men also sometimes forget that just because they paid a £50 bill at a local cafe that they aren't entitled to sex. That's just prostitution with extra steps. A first date is an opportunity to show who you are pretending to be and who you have the potential to become. like cleaning up your references when applying for a job or working overtime before you apply for a mortgage. Rounding off your sharper edges is completely normal, and your date will be doing the same thing. In poker, you don't show your hand in the first round. Be cautious not to ignore red flags as they appear. Studies show that humans can only maintain a facade for up to 3 months. The opinions of friends and family can be invaluable since they aren't looking through rose-tinted glasses. As long as these friends have your best interests at heart, that is. Also, be upfront about and work to improve your own red flags. Maybe you could have an interesting conversation on a first date just by self-confessing red flags that you each possess. Anyone who can't name at least one is likely lying to themselves. If someone can't be honest with themselves, don't expect them to be honest with you either. This isn't a dating channel, and I don't want it to become one. I'm much more interested in philosophy and psychology. Some dating gurus might tell you some trick to get people to like you, or give you some silly challenge like cold approaching 100 women in a week, which will just make them as uncomfortable as you feel. There is no trick. Just become the man that she can rely on. And as much as I hate this word in this context, maybe she likes you too. So next time you see her, shoot your shot. Thanks for watching.